Brilliant. So here we are. So today I am with Emma Champion, who is the author of Truth. And Emma actually was my assistant about 10 years ago, weren't you, Emma?
I was.
Yeah. So when I ran DU and PR, Emma did copywriting for me, helped me out on the PR and marketing side. I think that might have been your first job after uni, wasn't it? Or was it while you were at uni?
It was during uni, yeah. I was desperate to get some experience behind me, and you very kindly helped me out with that. So thank you. I'm still grateful.
And I remember at the time, obviously, we had lots of conversations about film and your course and media and so on. And I remember at the time you were talking about writing a novel. So obviously, here you are. Years later, and your novel's been published, which is a fantastic story. So your novel, Taiden's Truth. I'm just going to read the blurb on Amazon. So the daughter has ridden the 4 islands of the Shelmia, fallen into chaos. The world is under threat from a fallen deity intent on revenge and destruction. Only one can end these dark and difficult times. Also, Salazar's prophecy states, but prophecies without proof are no more than myth, and the so-called daughter of the Shelmare is nowhere to be found. When a lonely princess befriends a prisoner dwelling in the dungeons of her castle home, his remarkable story has the potential to reverse the Shelmare's fortunes irrecoverably. However, it is one thing to seek the truth and another to know it. Having acquired this revelatory knowledge, can she find the strength to accept it and rise to all it implies? Taiden's Truth is the debut novel of Emma Champion and part 1 in the Taiden trilogy. Wow, so very exciting. Trilogy too.
Yes. It was originally I had plans to do a 5-book series. Because in the story there are 5 islands in the Shelmare, which is the world in which the story takes place. So I was going to do sort of a book per island as Taiden takes her journey. But what I found was that I didn't want to sort of pad out the story with too much, and I thought, right, okay, I'm going to keep the story on track and keep the pace nice and fast, and so that people's interest wouldn't kind of drop off sort of maybe at book 3 or book 4. So it made more sense as a trilogy in the end.
I suppose you've got to look at what's happened to what's his name, Game of Thrones author. It looks like he's lost interest in actually finishing it.
I think his situation must be incredibly difficult in that, you know, other people have come in and finished his story for him. So now he's faced with the dilemma: does he tell the same story or does he take it in another direction? And I completely sympathize. I know people have been quite hard on him, but I get it. I kind of get that he would be at a bit of a crossroads with that.
No, I can understand that. So let's talk about you know, how it all happened over the years. So Taiden's Truth, is this the actual novel that you were working on when you were working with me, or is it very different?
I can reveal that yes, it was.
Really?
It was 16 years in the making in the end, because I had a dream, an actual sleeping dream that inspired the story, and that dream happened in 2003 while I was on holiday in Greece, and I had inexplicably packed a notepad and pen, which happened to be on the nightstand next to me when I woke up. So as soon as I woke up from the dream, I wrote it down. And I developed the story from that. The dream was basically about a queen who stole a baby, and I woke up wanting to know, why would she do that? What motivated her to do that? And the whole story developed from that one idea. But as you can imagine, it took a long while to sort of come from that tiny kind of seed of an idea to develop a world and things like that. Was actually quite a time-consuming thing. But once I had that in place, it was finding a way to tell the story that made sense. So there were actually, I think, about 3 or 4 drafts of the story before the one that actually came out recently. So yeah, the first few drafts, I toyed with a few different storytelling tools. So I tried writing it in the first person, which didn't quite work. I tried telling it from the perspective of a narrator who was actually present for the for everything that had happened in the story, and that didn't quite work either. I got almost to the end of a third draft, and it came out all right, but it was told in a very kind of linear way. And what I found was I wanted to play with that a little bit more. I wanted to have fun with the timeline, and that's how I came up with the current format, which is the story is interspersed with several flashbacks which inform the main thread of the story. And once I kind of figured that out, everything sort of came together. But that literally took 14 years to get to that point. So in the end, I got fed up of leaving the story on the back burner, because it was always something I worked on in my spare time. And in 2017, I put myself on a plane and took myself off to Croatia, shut myself in a little apartment with a lovely view, and just forced myself to sit down and write it. And I got the bulk of it done there. So yeah, I think that's going to be my routine for the upcoming books, for definite.
Could be worse.
Yeah, it's not a bad way to get something done.
Yeah. So talking about things that worked for you, did you join any writers groups or anything like that?
Whilst I was still working with you, I actually won an opportunity to go to a writers retreat, which is called the Swanwick Writers School. In Derbyshire, and it's a lovely sort of week-long retreat where there are guest speakers and seminars and lectures that you can attend. And I met with several really important people that I'm still in touch with, writers, agents, all kinds of people in the business. And that was an eye-opener, because that was one of the first times I realized that the draft I was working on wasn't quite working. And I think meeting with other writers and people in the industry really helped me to see where I was going wrong. But apart from that one retreat, I didn't really join any clubs or groups as such. That experience, because I kept in touch with several of the people I met there, I felt that kind of was enough for any time that I wanted advice and stuff. I kind of had that support network in place. That was really, really beneficial. But that was a competition that I entered, and I won that as a student. So that was amazing.
Wow. And do you have an agent?
I don't have an agent, no. Traditionally, yes, you do need an agent to get the attention of the larger publishing houses. But I actually, in the end, got my contract with a smaller publishing house who specialise in getting new writers off the ground without the need of an agent. As such, I mean, you can have one, but for this particular publishing house, you didn't need one necessarily. And that was, in the end, my way in. I did apply to agents and publishers at the same time, and I was actually turned down by about 3 different agencies. Purely, but the feedback that I got was basically that I didn't really match up to the style of writer they had on their books, or they weren't quite sure to go with a brand new writer out of the box. So it was, and it was a little bit disheartening at the time, but it finally sort of culminated in this one opportunity, and I was still waiting for other replies at the time, but the contract that I was offered was fantastic and really worked for me. And it allowed me as well a certain amount of artistic freedom to kind of put my ideas forward for how I wanted the book to look and things like that. I really liked that I was given that chance.
Yes. So I've read your a piece that you did for Lisa Orban on the Golden Notebook, and where you talk about basically how you designed the cover, really. So it's great that you were able to have that artistic input, which obviously you wouldn't have got in with Penguin or whatever, would you?
Exactly. So I think in those terms, that was absolutely meant to be how it came about.
Yeah. So you mentioned, about how disheartening it was when you had a few rejections, and also, the whole 10-year span, and obviously writing a number of drafts. That takes a lot of guts and stamina, doesn't it? It's very easy to give up. So, yeah, I mean, tell me a little bit about your philosophy around resilience and stamina, and were there any moments where you almost ripped it all up and said, that's enough?
Oh God, absolutely.
Yeah.
Those early drafts were awful, like really awful, and there were a number of times when I thought, oh, this is just a waste of energy and I'll never get this done. And I remember when I was in school, because a writer was the first thing that I ever wanted to be, and I remember going to my teacher, and this was in junior school, and holding up the book I was reading and saying to him, I want to do this is what I want to do. And he said, yes, but I've read your stories, Emma, and they're not quite as good as another students in the class, are they? And yeah. So there was that. I think his voice stayed in my head for a long time, where I thought to myself, okay, well, I could write, but I'm probably not as good as other writers out there, therefore I shouldn't bother. But what I found was there is space in the market for all kinds of stories, told in all different styles. And as I read more books growing up, I kind of realized that you don't have to be Shakespeare to tell a story. And you don't have to compare yourself to anyone. You can find your own voice and realize that voice will connect with somebody, even if it's just a handful of people. And that makes it worth doing. And another thing I came to realize as well, I came to realize obviously that he was wrong to kind of encourage me like that. But what I realized was it was something I had to do. And it was as much for me as it was for the people who will end up reading it. It was the idea that never went away. And I knew that for that reason, I had to see it through. And the way that it came to me as well was, having had a dream, and it almost felt like that idea was gifted to me. Like, okay, here are the tools, Emma, like make something out of this. So I thought, okay, it would be wrong to this is kind of a gift that's been given to me, and I'd be wrong to ignore it or not acknowledge it in some way. So I think even though there were times where I had doubt in my mind, I doubted my own sort of talent. Obviously, I don't see myself as a J.K. Rowling or anything like that. I don't set my sights that high, but I know that I can write, and I had a story to tell. So I thought, right, okay, I'll just keep trying until it comes out in a way that I'm pleased with it. And yeah, this was draft 5 was the actual sort of style of story that ended up being in the book. So yeah, it took 5 attempts, and each attempt was completely different. So every attempt I was ready to chuck it all away. But it was just one of those things where I knew I had to see it through. And I think the most difficult part of that was that I couldn't give it my 100% attention for a long time, because I had my full-time career going on, and at a certain point as well, I dropped all of that and went back to university as a mature student. So I had all of that, and the story was always going on in the background of all of that too. So it was always on the back burner, which was also very frustrating. It would have been easy to leave it alone and forget about it, but it was that thing that always called me back. So that's how I knew I had to do it. I very much believe in signs and fate, and I just kind of knew that the way that it had come about meant that I had to see it through to fruition.
And well, obviously there's a lot of faith in yourself, a lot of just keeping going, a lot of being prepared to start all over again if something's not right. So obviously that's in your literary, in your writing world. Do you have the same qualities? Have you used the same qualities outside in in other parts of your life?
I think I have. I think over the last 10 years, especially, my confidence has grown a massive amount. You probably remember how I was when we met. I was kind of in the middle of my degree, a little bit unsure of myself and trying to find my feet. I feel like 10 years on, I've really learned a lot about who I am and what makes me tick, and to silence those little voices of doubt that either whisper to you in your own mind or come from outside sources. Anything that tells you that you can't do something is really, it's up to you how much of that you let influence you. And I think that how much you let that influence you depends on how confident you are. And I think it's taken me this long to get to a point where I can shut those voices off and say, no, I believe in myself and I believe in what I'm doing enough to see it through, to make it happen.
Yeah.
I know that, going back to your question, I do sort of use the kind of resilience that I had sort of trying to get the book completed. I have used that sort of same resilience in my working life. Obviously I didn't graduate until I was 31, so I got off to a bit of a late start. I'm a bit of a late bloomer, so I didn't really start my career until then, and I saw a way in. I knew I wanted to write as part of my job, and a way into that was through marketing. And the first graduate job I got was sort of rewriting a website, so it was lots of copy, and I loved that. But what that kind of led me to was more sort of marketing roles that were sort of more complex, so that covered the broader marketing mix. And over time I felt like I was veering off path, that it just wasn't for me. And I found that the more embroiled I became in all of the analytics and the design side and all that other stuff, it was taking me away from the writing. So it was about a year ago that I decided to specialize in copywriting, which really kind of gave me more of like a tunnel vision. And I shut off all that other noise, and suddenly writing became my main focus. And at that point I felt everything change. It was very, very strange how that sort of came about. When I made writing my working life and my spare time hobby, everything clicked into place at the same time. And my confidence grew, and I had more of a sense of purpose and direction than I had in a long time. I think for a lot of years I was going off in lots of different directions and not quite knowing which way to go. And as soon as I knew and I focused on it and I went that way, everything came together really, really easily. So I think it's about sort of recognizing what your path is and being true to it once you realize.
I can see that. You said the book was your path, you had to be done. And so there's a lot of, I don't know, what's the word, realizing your truth, isn't there? And this is what you should be doing.
Because I felt like for the longest time it felt like I was leading a bit of a double life, because I was like a marketeer by day and a writer by night, if you like. And it felt wrong to kind of be something that I wasn't for the majority of my day.
Hold on one second, Emma. My battery is needs to be plugged in.
No worries.
The one thing I forgot to do before we started. So yes, double life.
It felt like I was sort of living a bit of a lie during the day and then living my truth in my spare time. And it wasn't until I decided to bring that truth into my day job that the kind of the two paths finally converged, and I was going the right way. So I think if you let life pull you in lots of different directions, you can sort of, the danger is you lose focus a little bit. And I lived that way for a good decade. And it wasn't until I realized where I was going wrong and I course corrected that things sort of started to come together for me.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, focus, realizing what you're supposed to be doing, and just getting on with it.
Yeah, yeah.
Persistent. Is there anyone role model wise, whether it's a writer or not, that has inspired you during this time?
Um, well, when I worked with you, I came on board with you. At the time, you were actually running a chicklit website.
Oh yes, I remember that. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So I got to interview a number of authors, and it was through that I got to speak to PC Cast.
Mm.
And she's an American writer, a fantasy novelist, and she has a book series. She went on to write about vampires and things like that, I think, but she had a trilogy out at the time called the Divine Trilogy, which was a really great story about a girl from Oklahoma who's kind of whisked into this fantasy domain.
Yeah.
And I loved talking to her. She was really inspiring because like myself, like the experiences that I've since had, I remember she told me that she was a single woman for a long time, and then she wrote this character into her books named Clan Finton, who he was the reason I loved her books, because he was such a great character to read. And she kind of, in that visualization of writing her ideal man, if you like, she ended up meeting a real life Klansman and marrying.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
She wrote her future into being.
Yeah, which is, it says a lot about visualization and how powerful that is. And I never forgot that story that she told me, and I only learned that through interviewing her for you. Yeah. So she was a massive inspiration, and I really enjoyed her books, being in the fantasy genre as well. I think it's had quite an impact on me. But also, this is something that probably sounds a bit left field, but Beatrix Potter is a massive influence for me. I know I don't write children's stories, or I don't write illustrated books, but she had a vision for her work, which I really admired.
Yeah.
She knew going in, like, it wasn't enough for her for a publisher to say, yeah, we'll publish your books. She didn't want it to end there. She was like, no, yeah, that's great that you want to publish them, but I need them to look a certain way. I want them to feel a certain way. I want you to print in black and white, not color. And she was very adamant. They did compromise on a few things, and thankfully, her illustrations did come out in color in the end. But she had a real vision for her work and how the books would look, and I was very much the same. I sort of had a picture in my mind of how I wanted the books to look as well as read. So yeah, I really I kind of feel a connection with her. And a couple of years ago, my parents took me to Hilltop.
Yes, I've been there. Yeah.
I absolutely loved it there.
Yeah.
And it was weird because it was when I came home from that trip that I found my publishing contract on the doormat when I arrived home.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, signs.
Yeah. And I
what you mean.
It was so spooky. And I remember sort of just when I opened the envelope, just saying, "Oh, thank you, Beatrix." I felt like she was kind of nudging.
Yeah. Well, that's fantastic.
Yeah, she was really inspiring, and I really liked as well that she had sort of early ideas of marketing in her mind as well. Sort of having been that way myself, she sort of came up with ideas for merchandising and stuff like that for her books that the publishers didn't really think of and hadn't been done before. So she sort of had an idea for promotion too, which was quite an innovation at the time. And I find that really fascinating.
Yeah. Especially for a woman too.
Absolutely. Well, this is the other thing. She really didn't take off in her career until her late 30s, which is very much like me as well. So, I'm approaching 40.
Happens to us.
I felt like there were some parallels between she and I, and I found that really, really interesting.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. So finally, just to round up, is there any advice you'd give for somebody? Might not necessarily be a book, it might be a script or a creative project in some way, but somebody that wants it to happen and wants it to happen right now.
I would, the one piece of advice that I always give is just never ever give up. If you want something, you just go after it with everything you've got. It will take a lot of hard work and an investment of time and possibly money, but you will get there eventually. If it's something that you want and you have that vision in your mind, you can make something a reality, if you just have the vision and the courage to do it. But another thing I would say is that, advice wise, is that is more than one avenue into what you want to do. Whether you want to publish a book or you want to get a qualification, whatever it is, there is more than one way to go about it. I know that I sort of dropped full-time work and went back into education full-time, but I could have gone about it a number of different ways. I could have gone the apprenticeship route. I could have taken sort of NVQs while I was working, and that there were so many different ways that I could have done it. And it's the same for anything. It's the same for writing. I mean, the industry tells you that you need to get an agent, and then your agent will field you out to publishers, and that's the only way that it will happen. But there are so many different avenues to explore now. I mean, people are self-publishing, and the whole Kindle network that people are really taking advantage of, which is great. There's self-publication. There are hybrid publishing contracts where you get sort of a mixture of the two. And there are publishing houses out there that fully support new authors and take submissions without unsolicited submissions, so submissions without the need of an agent. So it's just a case of doing a bit of research, knowing your audience, and just getting in touch with the people that you know will sort of help you to move things along. I remember writing a lot of emails, a lot of letters, sending sample writing to people, and even way before that, sort of unrelated to the book, the work I did for you, writing book reviews and then writing corporate PR type articles and things like that. It all helped towards the end. I knew that what I wanted to achieve, and getting as much sort of experience and networking with people behind me really, really helped. So all I would say to people is just stick at it and realize that, you know, if people say the way is shut, it often isn't. There's always another way in.
Different door. Good advice. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Emma. So obviously your book is available on Amazon.
It is, and all other retailers as well have now stocked it. So, and it's available in the US as well, Barnes and Noble.
Oh, brilliant. Okay, so, all good bookshops. So brilliant. Thank you so much for your time today, and I'm so pleased that it's all come together for you. And obviously it's your hard work and persistence that's done it. But really, really, really pleased. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me.
Okay, so thank you, Emma.
No problem. Thank you.